So hello everybody, here we are at the Disruptive Friday weekly stream. My name is Tatiana Bazzichelli, I'm the director of the Disruption Network Club. I'm very happy to welcome all of you, even if I don't see you, but I'm sure you are there. And before welcoming our guest of today, as the first day of our weekly stream, I would like to give a bit of information to our audience. Important to say that we have a chat on our website, as you can see. You can write your comments there, also your questions, and we also would like to use this little tool for sharing experiences. So please feel free to share what you think is important, and this will be also the moment, the tool you can use for sharing the questions with us. And the idea today will be that we will take the questions at the end. But I'm very happy now to welcome our guests that I suppose they are there. We have Ela Kagel from Berlin, Marc Garrett from London, and Cassie Thornton from London as well. So welcome all of you. And I would like first to say 2 words about us. We are an organization in Berlin that is working with hacktivism, social justice, whistleblowing, and also with political criticism. And as many, we decide to start being on streaming in these days, also to feel close with our community. And the guests that we have today, they all work with communities as well. So we want to start having a nice conversation and sharing about our networks too, and the way we are working all together. But first, I would like them to introduce one by one. So we want to start with Ela Kagel, just briefly say who you are, and then we do Marc and Cassie.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana, and hello, everyone. My name is Ela Kagel. I am joining from Berlin. I am co-founder of Supermarkt, and Supermarkt is a physical space and a collective of people that works at the intersection of digital culture and alternative economies. And yeah, I'm glad to share some thoughts around the meaning of space later on.
Then we go with Marc.
Hello, my name is Marc Garrett. I'm co-founder and co-director of Furtherfield.org. And we have a gallery in Finsbury Park in London, actually in the park. And we also have a common space, and we also have a community online, and which is kind of like platform-based, but also an email list called Net Behaviour. And yes, I'm just really interested in having a dialogue, and also to reflect on what's going on between all us lots, as in, because at small to medium, actually small groups and individuals that are exploring kind of social change through networks, etc. So yes.
Thank you. And Cassie?
Hey, my name is Cassie Thornton, and I'm an artist and the co-director of the Reimagining Value Action Lab, which is in Thunder Bay in Canada, and that's where I usually live. But I'm in London doing a residency at Furtherfield with Marc, and I came to do a project about kind of collective health, and I had arrived just before the pandemic. So now I am in London, and I'll be talking about that project.
Thank you, all of you. I just want to introduce a bit the topic of today. We were all thinking to discuss on the discourse of art and culture, since we witness the closure of many of the spaces and the activities and the programs that we were all planning. And of course, nobody of us had other alternative choice than to do that, because it's also becoming a matter of protecting the vulnerability of the other people. But so we also thought that the answer is not just shutting down completely. At least we want to be live in the virtual and try also to share experience among each other. In a sense, this is also what we have been doing since 20 years now, because many of us have been working with digital culture, with network practices since the 90s. We were all very surprised and shocked by what happens worldwide, but at the same time, I thought that we were fast trying to find alternatives and also a form of resistance in this moment. And of course, we are still experimenting. It's also a bit, if you want, a short time to come up with alternative, because everything is happening so fast at the moment. But we at the Disruption Lab are also believing that is also the moment to make our voice here and try to come up with collective solutions all together, not only in trying to go on with our programs, but also trying to understand how we could support each other, how we could benefit also from each other, even if we cannot meet with our physical bodies. And so the idea of today was really to start with this question: how do we get together imagining this form of cultural resistance? What are the solutions that we all are applying? And at the same time, how are we engaging with our network, with the people that are in our proximities and also are part of our normal everyday life in the space we run or in the culture program we are developing. And so we decided as Disruption Lab to start with these Disruptive Fridays. In a sense, when we started with our organization that we call Disruption Network Lab, we would have never imagined that a disruption would have then become in this way, because I think we are all really experiencing a disruption at the moment. But the question for us has always been, how do we intervene in this disruption from within? And how are we trying to open up the systems that are closed? Now are not only the systems that are closed, but also even our houses. Many of us cannot even go out easily anymore if we think about countries like Italy or Spain. And we have to come up with alternative solutions to keep sharing what we think is important, and most of all to try to keep alive our critical thinking. So we will all try to experiment new formats and new ideas. At the same time, this will be a challenge for all of us. Is already a challenge, because especially for people that are running spaces, of course, without the space, running is impossible. But we are also trying to come up with new ideas that I think are pretty interesting at the moment. And I already saw that many people online in different cities are coming back with interesting programs, alternative. And for sure, this is also the case for all of you, the people that we are having the discussion today. So I would like also to try reflect with each of you about this alternative solution that we are adopting, and also open a question collectively: what is important at the moment? For sure, we can keep on going with our program on streaming, but we have also to imagine how do we really support each other, even if we cannot meet. The first person then I would like to ask about the local situation is Ela. As Ela just said, she's speaking from Berlin, and she's running Supermarkt. That is a great space. We have been collaborating with them many times. So please, Ela, if you would like to tell us, how are you experiencing the situation in Berlin? What is the situation at Supermarkt? And also, what is the alternative solution you are adopting at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Tatiana. Well, I think the situation for many of our friends and partners who run spaces is probably is quite similar, right? So we are so used to holding space, and some of us have done that for a really long time. Like Supermarkt, for instance, is now in its 10th year of existence. So for me, to be honest, I feel some kind of crisis right now, because I'm not able to hold that physical space anymore, which I realize has such an importance for me, but also for a lot of the work we are doing. So I guess as much as anybody else, we have been trying to embrace new technologies and tools in order to, to just, remain in contact with everyone. And, just shifted our meetups from the real space to Zoom or other platforms, and try to engage via those channels. But for today's meeting, I decided to leave my home office and I came back to Supermarkt, which is totally abandoned, of course. And I'm sitting here with a super heavy heart, I have to say. And it's not only because of, my sentimental feelings about space and hosting, but I think it also has another dimension, which I would really like to discuss with you, which I'm very interested also to hear from everybody else. So my observation is, and that was of course also before the Corona crisis, that space is a political statement, right? Space itself, holding a space, is also a form of resistance. So for me, the big question is, I wonder if it's that simple to take our work and just transform it into the digital sphere, and using other spaces that are maybe not as autonomous and not as safe as the spaces we've been, we have created for ourselves, like the physical spaces. And if we look at Berlin, that got increasingly gentrified, I think holding cultural space is still, and has been, especially over the past weeks and months, it's a symbol of resistance against the winner takes all capitalism. And also the conference that you are currently preparing is about that topic, right? So Evicted by Greed is addressing that 100%. So that's why I was thinking it's important to talk about space, because now, of course, with the Corona crisis, more and more of these spaces become endangered. And despite the fact that the Berlin Investment Bank has offered an immediate relief fund for artists and cultural workers of 5,000 euros each, which was a great help, I think the long-term effects will be critical for the independent arts and culture spaces everywhere, not just in Berlin, of course. I think we can expect many of them closing down, or at least struggling even more to pay their rent. And I guess even if we will be able to open the spaces again, it will require even more effort from us to hold that space. So if if I look around here in Kreuzberg, of course it's the place is empty. There are only a few people out there running errands, but there's no public life happening. And if I think about our situation here at Supermarkt, of course, we are now almost 10 years. We meant to celebrate in summer. We were dreaming of editing a catalog, but now everything is different. So what we have been trying to do as an immediate response when the crisis started to hit is, of course, offering online meetups and so forth. So we made an experiment, which I thought was really interesting. We wanted to test, and again, this has to do with space. We wanted to test which of the open source streaming platforms are equipped to hold a critical number of people. And we've done like a live hopping through all these platforms, and we experienced, how many of them collapsed with 6 people and then 10, 20, 30, 40. So in the end, we ended up on Zoom, just like we do today. Don't get me wrong, this is no criticism about the choice of platform. This would be ridiculous if we would start criticizing each other about these choices, right? Because we are also running our program there. But I also think it's, if we talk about the physical spaces and how we manage to run them, and if we look at the options we have in the digital sphere now, I really think it shows very clearly that there's lots of work to be done to help creating those alternatives of a digital economy that is safe and good for us to use, and that is not like 100% corporate environment. And I'm just a little bit worried with all the work we are doing now, that we continue feeding all these corporate platforms, and a lot of the content we produce will simply be co-opted and embraced, and maybe the messages will just be watered down because of the environment they're living now. And this is something I really feel very emotional about, and this is something that that makes me worried. And it's not that I'm having any alternatives for that, you know. I just feel that I really feel this need to address this topic and to help each other to develop alternatives where we can actually feel safe, also in the digital sphere. And then just as an end point, you know, I'm also part of the planning committee for the Platform Cooperativism conference that was planned to happen in Berlin in November this year. It seems ridiculous for us to, you know, plan for something so far ahead, because none of us can possibly know what is going to be what the situation will be like in November. So we thought, okay, let's put this to the digital world and let's start putting our demand out there. And the demand actually is, we need a cooperative digital economy now. We can't wait for that. We really need to build spaces for us that allow us to continue our work in a way that is compliant with our values, with our emotions, with our feelings of safety. And this is just, you know, especially since I'm now here in the space, which normally is full of people and program and energy, I feel that even more. And yeah, so this is basically what I would like to share. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ela. And I wanted to say that, yeah, I totally understand also the feeling of having to deal with empty spaces or programs that need to be reconsidered just fast and trying to go on in the creative way we are doing. But I also want to be positive, because for sure, I think from one side we have to analyze which kind of systemical structure we are dealing with and what will be the consequence of all of this. But I also believe that we as a network also have the potential to survive this, because we have been also doing this kind of cooperations and support of each other, both on the physical and on the digital sphere since many years. So I think that this is really the moment in which we have to unite with each other and also try to imagine new form of cooperation. And I agree with you also that this has to do with the platforms we are using. And I wanted to say that for sure we are not happy about Zoom today. And we were reflecting internally, should we actually do the first Disruptive Friday on Zoom or not? Because we are all conscious that they are tracking us for advertisement. Hello, Zoom, I say that. But at the same time, we are now also experimenting internally to see alternative, what we can use. And hopefully for the next week, we will be able to have our own streaming system running that we have not to be dependent by Zoom. But I also wanted to ask you something especially related to the platform co-ops, because I know that you started a series of workshops online, and one was yesterday, right? So I wanted to know, how did it go? What will be the next steps? Can people join you? Because I think it would be interesting as a space that you are, also to understand how the people can still collaborate with you and reflect how to bring each other support in this time of crisis.
Yeah, so basically these calls are a weekly offer for the platform cooperativism community in Berlin and beyond, of course, to keep on exchanging their experience in building cooperative alternatives to the platform economy. So yesterday we talked about building a cooperative mindset, and we had people from Mondragon, there was Magda from Smart, which is a freelancer cooperative, and other people that are trying to hack the system with really new ideas and new ways of founding organizations and distributing governance among themselves. And it's super interesting, and that is maybe also a positive effect of this more remote ways of communicating, that we have more people that normally can never come to our events simply because they can't make it. But now it's really interesting to see who is still there and who wants to talk. And I'm amazed by the quality of conversation and also by the urgency that people bring to these calls. And I have the feeling that there's a great potential in there. And I haven't managed to, I see that you are also showing the website. I have to update the website with the next online calls. I haven't made it today, but there will be online up tomorrow, promised.
And when is the next meeting you're having as Platform Coop?
The next one will be on Thursday. As usual, Thursday 4 to 6, and then there will be a platform cooperativism call concerning the conference that was about to happen in November, and this is going to be also really interesting. And we'll have an announcement on that on the website as well, and of course on our usual channels. Okay,
thank you, Ela. And then I would now pass to Marc. And we go to London discussing with him, and especially we would like to know more from the situation of Furtherfield. Furtherfield, as Marc said before, is a gallery and a great networking project that has been active since the 90s. So there is a lot of potential for sure to keep on going with your network, but at the same time, we would like also to know how are you dealing with the situation of closure now in London, especially because many of the activities you are doing have been involved public in the park of Finsbury Park, where the gallery of Furtherfield is located. So what are your alternative solutions, and what are you doing at the moment to go on with your program and also to imagine new form of collaboration with your network?
Okay, so I'll start with what's happened and then I'll answer your question, which basically what we've had to do is that because lots of projects have kind of folded, because a lot of our projects that we've been doing, you kind of collect extra funding to keep the group going, Furtherfield going. And so Charlotte Frost and Ruth Catlow are at the moment off for 2 months. They've been furloughed. And so that means they earn 80% of what they would normally earn, which is government funded, or actually it's a loan really, but they keep on saying it's a grant. And that means the only person left at the moment is me for 2 months on 2.5 days a week. So that's where we are right now. And I think Ruth starts the furlough next Wednesday and Charlotte starts the furlough on Monday. So from then on for 2 months, I'm going to be holding the ship, so to speak, officially, because it's against the law for the other two to be working on Furtherfield while they're given this supposed grant by the government, which is called a furlough. So it's going to be a very difficult 2 months for us, and it could go on longer, of course. And regarding some of the programs that we've had at the park, we've spent 2 years before now programming intensely, earning extra funding. We've been our reserves have been amazing, and also we've got 2 years of programming that we've had to stop, which was ahead. So, and that involved very strong, detailed connections with the local community, shopkeepers, the local mosque, local schools, because there's like over 140 different languages around Finsbury Park, and we're linking up with all these different communities. And so a lot of hard work has been dedicated to relate to the people in the park or who live around the park to some of the ideas that we're exploring during the next 2 years, which is a project called Love Machines. And so the stuff that we are carrying on at the space at the moment will be installation with called The Uninvited, which is Nye Thompson and Hans Bernhard from Uber Morgan. And that's actually a horror movie for and by machines. And that will be actually broadcasted from the gallery live and also projected outside to any strays in the park that come across the work of art. So there's stuff going on, and also to adapt. What's happened is like the Furtherfield email list called Net Behaviour has suddenly swelled up with lots of people discussing about the virus and how it's affected their everyday lives. And that's just non-stop now, which it's suddenly awoken. And which is quite nice because the list sleeps for a while. We just keep it there without putting any pressure that it's meant to be doing anything. And then suddenly loads of people start discussing their everyday issues around what's happened all around the world, which is really interesting. And so that's quite special to actually be reading people's personal accounts of how they're dealing with the virus themselves. We're also, the further list, which is a regular kind of once monthly list that I've been doing, went out today, so where you represent the network and the community that's linked via the internet of kind of like art, technology and social change, which is kind of like a critical reflection of our culture that we all share. And also there's a podcast that started on 10th of April where we can try and deal with that issue as well, where we can invite people that we'd normally have exhibitions with or we work with, and also other people. Some people from the Net Behaviour email list can be part of the content and production of news from where we are, which start as a podcast at Furtherfield. And at the moment, Cassie Thornton, Cade DM, Joseph Delap, Jara, Clara Breck, Regine Debatti, Jeremy Height, they're the people that, and also Stephen Pritchard, they're the people that we've got in the first programme. So it's like a collection. And that all comes from I'll be mixing the whole thing because we used to do it on Resonance FM 10 years ago. And then before, I used to run with Heath Bunting, a pirate radio station in Bristol, and it's going to have that kind of energy. So in a way, it's inspired me and to kind of explore a much more kind of grounded way of dealing with the crisis that we all share, and see what energy that people are willing to express through that process of dealing with it, and see what that looks like, and having a platform where that can be. At the moment, it'll just be through sound on the podcast. So, and it's really interesting what Ela was saying regarding technology and domination of the networks and the platforms that, because I think as far as Furtherfield's concerned, everything we do is about survival in the 21st century. As part of a kind of how you form radical alliances and friendships and build on that and break down the kind of patriarchal hierarchy, which is based around proprietorial kind of technology and ownership of our kind of indigenous and class cultures. And you know, I will be challenging that till I die. And so, and I think Furtherfield will as well. And I think everyone here will do as well. And so this virus, you know, if it kills me, I'll stop, but not until then.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I was actually also reflecting while you were speaking that this is a big anniversary for us, because exactly 5 years ago, we were doing the first conference of the Disruption Network Club. That was the 6th of April, and was the conference Drone, in which we invited former drone operator Brandon Bryant, and you were among the moderators of that conference. So
yes.
In a sense, we can at least consider this moment as a moment of celebration. And for sure, it's also a moment important for the Disruption Network Club, because it's exactly 5 years that we started our program. And also reflecting a bit on what you were saying, I also find the paradox in all this situation, if you want, because I'm sure you remember that in the 90s, we were all very inspired by viruses. We were even considering them art forms. This was the pleasure of the net art times, in which the virus was actually an entity that we were all, in a sense, embracing as a possible chaos on the net. And now instead we are experiencing another kind of situation in which we are all confronted with this alien form that is becoming part of our everyday life. And for sure, I think, as I said before, we could come up with new form of imaginations, despite the situation that is often very terrifying, I would say, and sad for many. But I was noticing in the last weeks that all these conditions brought us to experiment a lot with the formats. And in a sense, we are re-experiencing a sort of a punk phase of do-it-yourself culture, in which everybody's trying to come up with new formats. You can see really big production that suddenly are doing streaming from their own living room. And this is also a bit of a secret pleasure in seeing that we are not all at the same level, and we are all trying to understand how do we do. So it's also a united moment for art and culture, because despite the production we can come up with, now we really need ideas that are bringing us together. So I also wanted to ask you, how do you see that? How do you also reflect on this new form of punk culture? Do you think there is any potential? Let's try to see also something positive in all this situation, and what we come up with new form of imaginaries.
Well, I think punk, there's a certain aspect to when punk started, which was quite nihilistic. But what was so great about it is that once the hammer of punk had been kind of slammed down, it cracked open a whole kind of a whole culture of film and just right across the board, writing and music. And, you know, so you have films like Jubilee by Derek Jarman, and really amazing new cultures coming out that were critiquing its own kinds of national sovereignty and its identity and the meaning of that. And I think what's interesting post-Brexit is that, you know, how pseudo Brexit is compared to punk, because punk is very much about being grounded with people with imagination. It's about having a radical imagination, not a dead imagination. And so it's very much about people where take control of the means of production on their own terms, whether it's creating their own record label, creating their own website, creating their own band. It can just go on and on. And I just think that what this virus can do is make us reevaluate our values of why we're doing what we're doing, and what it means to the people, to us, why we're working with certain people, and whether they're worth working with, whether they reflect the soul of who we are or the meaning we think we are. And I just think it's a good chance to kind of, if we want another word than punk or post-punk, I think emancipation is a good word if people have a difficulty in tapping into that kind of cultural identity. And I just think that reclaiming culture on our own terms with other people, whether it's indigenous, class-based or gender, this is the time to do it. And it's because before the walls come back up again. And so this is the moment between the cracks where we have to connect to each other with this difficulty and realize who we really are. And so, yes, I agree. This is the chance. If we don't do it now, and the walls will go back up again, you know, capitalism, yes, everyone's saying it's dead, but loads of people we know will go down with it. You know, so we have to really be, you know, playing with the death of capitalism, playing with viruses. What does that really mean in real life? Well, we're beginning to realize that now. So.
Thank you, Marc. And now I would like to pass to Cassie. That's from what I understood is also stuck in London at the moment. She's not normally based there, but she was developing an artwork with you and Furtherfield, and an artwork that is pretty on time because is about collective care and also collective health. I read that the 1st of April you were doing also a little workshop online through Furtherfield, and you are going on with this as well. So it would be interesting to know more about this artwork, Cassie, and if you can explain what it is, because I think is very crucial at the moment also to imagine alternative form of collective care and in which way we can help each other.
Well, thank you so much. And it's so good to hear both Ela and Marc talk. And I really, before now, I mean, I've done work in Supermarkt and inside the physical space of Furtherfield. And I feel like those are spaces where like I've had the most amazing like workshops and events and connected with people. And so right now it's been really interesting because we were forced to obviously take something that was meant for helping people connect in person and having to transform it into something that could happen online. And I wasn't sure if it was possible to sort of create moments of connection and transformation in an online space or not, because I had never really had that happen before. So the project that I came to London to work on was Something for Love Machines, which Marc was talking about, as a part of a long-term project that Furtherfield was doing called Citizen Sci-Fi, which I love so much. The idea that you know, everyday people in the park, people on the street, should have some sort of connection to like designing a future that they would actually imagine wanting to be in. And not feeling left out of the sort of technology that it will be developing around them. And for my part, I've been working for a couple of years on what had been sort of a thought project called the Hologram. And it's actually a very sort of simple social practice project that came from studying social solidarity clinics in Greece. So in 2014, 2015, 2016, during the height of the migrant crisis in Greece, well, there's been many heights, but during one moment in the migrant crisis in Greece, mixed with when they were deemed to be bankrupt by the EU, about 60 free clinics opened in squatted buildings all over Greece. And I found that to be incredibly inspiring. And I'm American, and I was living in California at the time, in Oakland, California. And I found these free clinics to be really inspiring, partially the way that they took a crisis and made something really healing and generative, and the anarchists did it, was very amazing to me, but also seemed really impossible, like nothing that I could really replicate in my world in the US, but something that we really needed. But in some way at that point in 2016, we weren't really acknowledging that the US had a crisis. It was before Trump. Nobody had healthcare. Housing was incredibly expensive. There was a huge homeless population. We were in a crisis, but we weren't acknowledging it. And so one project that I found really inspiring that was happening at the Greek clinics, which I think is really, really, I mean, just thinking about those clinics right now, I think is really useful and important in general, given that we're all going to be, we are experiencing a drought in terms of basic healthcare during this crisis, and it's going to keep going. But one of the projects that they were doing in Thessaloniki in the Social Solidarity Clinic, and then in an occupied factory called Viome, was they were offering patients when they first walked in to meet with 3 professionals at once. So you would go to the doctor and you would see a therapist, a social worker, and a doctor at the same time. And they would ask you for 90 minutes about where do you work? Who's your family? Are you lonely? What do you eat? And they really took into account the whole person and their health. And I thought that was really inspiring. And, but like, again, nothing that I could really imagine applying to my world. But I got together with a group of friends in Oakland at the time, and we kind of reflected on how we might take that model and translate it to our situation and do it in a way that we could practice on our own without experts, without space, without money, and being people that are artists and activists who don't have really stable housing or communities. So we developed this thing, which now I'm working on, and so some of the other people from the collective are working on under different names and different forms. But what I'm working on is trying to figure out how to make that thing that we saw, the one person seen by 3 people, something into a pure care model. And so basically what we've developed now is that we have a person who's called the hologram, and they're seen by 3 of their friends or 3 associates, whatever. One person focusing on social health, one person focusing on physical health, one person focusing on mental emotional health, and basically making a long-term commitment to get together every season and ask this one person questions, to give them all the attention, to really try to hold a full sense of all of the dimensions of their health. There's an image I see going right there. And what happens over time if you begin to actually pay attention to somebody's health and their patterns is that over time, you would be able to actually, the 3 people who we call the triangle, who are sort of the caretakers, over time would actually have the capabilities of helping the hologram make a tough decision, say that she's told by a doctor she needs a surgery and she's not sure, or maybe she's been offered a job and she's not sure she wants to change cities. Whatever the decision is, with this model, the idea is that you just have people who are around you for a long period of time who are able to actually help you think through things together, to do co-research, to accompany you if they're in the same place as you are, to just talk you through things. But I think that the core of the model is actually its relationship to a virus, or it's the way that it moves virally, is that no one really feels good receiving care from somebody who's not cared for. So the 3 people that are looking after you also necessarily need their own 3 people to look after them. And the real transformation in the project happens when a person, the hologram who's been receiving care, transforms and turns towards somebody else and makes them a hologram, cares for someone else. And so reciprocity in this model doesn't go back and forth. It's not transactional, like I don't give you what you give me. I kind of, in a weird way, pay it forward or pay it toward a sort of sense of greater community health. And I think that it's become really important to me, because especially right now, because there's a sense that there's a lot of emergencies happening. A lot of people need, we have a lot of sort of mutual aid systems to help people who are in specifically high needs isolation, or people who are really suffering dramatic loss right now. But what about just all of our friends who are experiencing a ton of anxiety and difficult feelings and not sure what the future is going to be? I find that this model offers a lot just in the immediate moment in terms of helping people, like being able to offer sustainable support to people. So when one of my friends is really, really anxious and not sure what to do with herself, it's kind of amazing to get on a phone with her, with two of her other friends also, and actually like problem shoot or problem solve or listen and ask good questions for an hour. And that to not just be me doing it means that I can do a lot more for a lot more people. And then I think the other side of the project is just creating systems where people who are like not necessarily in crisis, but maybe they are, have the capacity to actually ask for a sustainable form of help or support. And so the workshop that we did on Wednesday, on the 1st, was I think about 30 people came online. And you know, we did a bit of a presentation, but we also did a lot of different breakout groups so people could kind of practice the model where 3 people are basically asking one person about what their experience of a specific situation is. And we do a lot of practice work in the workshops where we all use the personal pronoun we. And so suddenly one person's experience becomes the group experience. And we sort of share in kind of owning one person's story for 10 minutes or a half hour or whatever. And I think that the thing that I really learned from this workshop is that it actually really is possible to make spaces where trust can be built and where new bonds can form that can go, I think that will begin now during this crisis when everyone's locked up, but will actually be strong enough to like outlast what happens next. And I think that that's a really important thing to think about, is just that like this situation right now, I think feels like we don't know how long it's going to last, but what we do know is that afterwards, everything's going to be pretty different. And I think that creating some practices in this time, which is sort of the time between times, that can like help sustain us after things change, will be really important. And I think one thing that we definitely know is going to change is that our healthcare systems are going to be pretty shaken up, and our living situations and our work situations, a lot of us are going to be really shaken up. So having kind of some systems in place for how to give and receive sustainable care, or at least have sustainable and honest conversations with people around us about what's actually happening in our lives, that are not, to develop relationships that are not built around avoidance, means that you know, our communities are going to stay stronger, and we're going to be able to sort of problem solve when we really need to in whatever situation we face next after this. So, I mean, I think the other part of this project that I think is really interesting and why it fits really well into Furtherfield is that it's also a parafiction project. So I think that just by telling the story of it and talking about it as a model, and asking people to imagine what it would be like if it multiplied, and if this was something that we all actually spent our time on, that in a weird way, it paints a picture of a different way of organizing society, which is it's just extremely different than a sort of centralized government model, or of a model that is based on the accumulation of capital. That like it's whether this project really grows or not, I think it represents the idea of a completely different way of distributing our energy and valuing our time, and what work could be in the next economy that we hope will happen after this BS ends.
Cassie, and I wanted to ask you, if people want to join your workshop and collaborate with you, what do they need to do? I think you're also planning new workshops, right? Online?
Mm-hmm. The best thing to do right now, that we're holding a course that is happening throughout April, which will help people to kind of develop their own holograms. That's through Furtherfield. The course is very full, but you know, I'm accessible over email, through the Furtherfield website, whatever. I think if people are really interested, they should still contact us. There's always room to fit more people in. But maybe better than that is to go, there's a website for the project called thehologram.xyz. And at the very bottom right, there's a place where you can sign up for the newsletter, and whatever the next workshops are after this course happens, people can sign up there. And then the other thing is that if you join that email list, there are some paid research opportunities for people to kind of try out the hologram for an hour and a half, help us do some research, and also kind of experience what the hologram is. So you'd find out about all that stuff if you sign up for the newsletter.
Thank you. I would say that we can now pass to the questions of the audience, since we have something like 10 minutes left. At the end of this session, we would also like to invite Lieke Plucher to announce the next Disruptive Friday. But first, I want to hear from the control panel of the Disruption Lab what are the questions, and take also the occasion to thank Elena Velianowska, that is working with us doing the production of these, and Jonas Franke, that has been doing all the animation and graphics that you saw during today. So Elena, tell us what are the questions of the public?
Yeah, hello everyone. I will be just joining in voice today. Thanks for all the great discussions with few of our colleagues. We were following the background, and there was a very interesting discussion developing around this idea that Ela mentioned about holding space as a political statement. And this is also going now to the first question. So it seems like the main segment of the population which will remain relatively unaffected are those whose income is based on real estate. So it makes me feel that this issue almost has to take precedence over many others. Question is for anyone who might know. I will just say this also, the other questions are, everyone can really take them up. I'm not sure if I overlooked this in the news, but are governments addressing this inequity, specifically exploitation on the part of real estate corporations, aside from laws guaranteeing against evictions? So I will go with all the questions. Maybe you want to take notes and then address them in the closing session. So there is another general question. Are you aware of any, also to all, of any big philanthropy involved in funding Furtherfield or Supermarkt or any of these related projects, as opposed to government funding, independent funding? So if there has been any additional stepping up to the plate to help out by these philanthropists. So the concern is how much more money these people, companies have than the governments in general, and will, after this crisis, the discrepancy will be probably bigger. So meaning they will have more control over culture or whatever survives after that. So there is another for Cassie, a shorter one. I'm interested how funding came about for such a brilliant but astronomical project, and how does one implement such an intricate structure of care totally DIY? And I would finish with another final question. Also,
wow.
Whoever wants to pick up on this. No, but I think, yeah, this is just
what is the fourth?
For a time where we have elevated technology to something that is almost superior to real life, as we are witnessing in the past few weeks. This crisis is also a real eye-opener to the actual fragility of the digital world. So as also Ela mentioned this in the beginning, is there a list of priorities in how we move forward with technological progress as a result of this? And is there really, like, what are the alternatives for finding a safer space to function online? As this might have been our reality so far, and it will continue. So I will just sign out now and pass on the discussions to you, so I don't.
Great. So I would say thank you, Elena. And so the first question was related to the real estate conditions. I thought that perhaps, I don't know, Ela, if you feel to answer to that, considering also we have been discussing a lot here in Berlin about this issue, and you were also the one bringing it up. By the way, we have also to say that we are planning a conference on the topics of real estate, eviction, and the global finance at the Disruption Network Lab. Will be end of May, and we will be on streaming, of course, as everybody. But yes, let's start now with the answers of you. Ela, do you want to say something about the first question?
So this first question was basically addressing that people in real estate are now profiting from the situation, right? Because now state regulation is even more out of hand than it was before. Well, you know, to me, I really think what we can do and should do, and the Evicted by Greed conference is just another building stone to that, is showing resistance, taking to the streets, talking to our politicians. But I somehow have the feeling, you know, there's only so much we can do because we simply lack the funds to compete with real estate syndicates. But I feel there is a sector we can really do something, and that addresses technology. We can start looking more concrete into the choices of technology. We can test all these initiatives if it's the collective tools, for instance, which is it's a cooperative, which is nice because people that are members, they own the technology. They can really make sure that it's being developed according to values and safety standards and privacy standards and so forth. I think this is really interesting. But there will be a long moment of frustration because all those tools, they don't deliver right away, right? So, I mean, we have to lower our expectations also in terms of production. And, you know, like this talk today, I mean, is fantastically produced, but we wouldn't have the same quality, I'm pretty sure. So there's more frustration involved, but that might also be the beauty of it, you know, to accept those glitches and to go down that road and to for me, it feels a little bit like stepping back in terms of user experience and so many other things, but maybe it's inevitable for us to find a new approach on how we look at technology, on how we organize ourselves around it in order to maintain and create those spaces, both in the physical world, but also in the digital.
Thank you. And the second question was, I think, really directed to Furtherfield about the funding and the alternative source of support and sponsoring for them. Marc, do you want to say something?
Yes. In a way, when we first started getting funding, which is about 2004 from the Arts Council of England, they funded the gallery space, but in a way they had to come to terms with the fact that Furtherfield really wasn't just a gallery space. We were also a community online. And also they've kind of, unlike larger institutions around that time, we were a small group and we were doing kind of quite progressive network culture stuff at the time. And so in other words, some of the other funding that we started getting wasn't directly from the Arts Council as well. So, and what's happened more recently, we've been able to get funding not just from the Arts Council. And then, you know, you've got other things like European funding, which we've had more recently, but you've also got funding from different technology-based groups as well that want to support some of the projects you're doing, which is usually community-based funding. One recent example is Culture Stake, which is a project that's being funded right now in real time as we speak, which is a project that Ruth's really been deeply involved in, which is, I'll read it out, which involves quadratic voting using blockchain technology. And the whole point of it is so artists or local people can vote their own kinds of local funding sources rather than have a hierarchy of the same people always getting the same funding. And so it creates a kind of, and everything we do, like Daiwo technology, everything's to break down the typical or activity is to break down the kind of hierarchical hegemony of what we people expect and who to get funding. So in a sense, one way we're cutting off the hand that feeds us, but in another way, we're still getting funding. But it's difficult all the way because we're not pleasing everyone. And that's usually those that kind of are against those that are trying to kind of deconstruct that hierarchical construct, which is usually, yeah. So funding is important, but Furtherfield as a group changes and shifts at different times. So it's not reliant on being a gallery or a space in the park. If that goes, we just change, and whether that's funding or not.
Thank you, Marc. And still speaking about the funding issue, there was a question for Cassie about the funding related to the hologram. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us something about?
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't do any projects that require money. So this is all like everything about the hologram up until now. This has been like involving absolutely no money. And right now, I mean, what I do with a lot of my projects is like, if I do a project that brings in more money, then I pool that money so that I can use it in another project. And that's what I've done basically in order to fund some of these sort of like paid research pieces of this. I basically had a high-paying art commission that I took the money from one thing and I'm using it to pay people to participate in the hologram in small ways now. It's not a lot of money, but I generally am mostly interested in doing work that can be sustained whether we have money or not. And I'm only interested in doing projects that are like 5 to 10 years or more. So that means weathering a lot of different economic atmospheres. And I think it's really, really important when we're doing something that's about kind of like reconstructing the trust that's been broken by capitalism, that we have ways to really sustain ourselves using stuff we already have. And that's what this project's all about.
Thank you, Cassie. So I would say that, yeah, there was still a question that was very poetic about the vulnerability of the digital and the topic of the virus. So who feels to answer to that? You have, okay.
Just the fact that I think what's interesting when discussed about the failure of technology is that what comes out of the vulnerability is another discourse, and that discourse becomes, in a sense, the kind of it's a non-academic dialectic, and so therefore it's something that's not official, and it's not something that's clean. But what happens, what you find in the end, what I find is the reason why you're connecting to those people in the first place, which is go back to what Ela and Cassie was saying. So I wrote this down. Even if the technology does not work, it's the values and experience we gain by building new ventures with these people that we're working with. So you realize that if you take that technology away, you're still interested in those people themselves. So
do you want to add something more, Ela or Cassie, about this question?
Yeah, just thanks so much for opening up about funding, Cassie. I find that so important and inspiring as well. And also what Marc said about funding. I mean, with Supermarkt, we're working pretty much the same. We don't have any institutional funding. There's no philanthropy funding. But we are reallocating money that we get elsewhere to be able to run our projects. And a lot of what we do simply is not, yeah, well, I mean, it's not like 100% relying on money. We would do it anyway, no matter if we had funds or not. And I just appreciate that attitude, while at the same time being aware that we need to live and eat, right? But yeah.
Well, I mean, just to say, we always pay the artists that we work with. Mm-hmm. It's not like none of them, sure. They're always paid.
Important to add that.
Yeah. No, I mean, we do the same, but very often what we do is a commons production. It's based on the common efforts of everybody involved. So there is not a situation where we can sit down and have to allocate funds, because everybody put what they had, what was possible for them, to the table. So in that sense, there was not like, money required. But of course, if we run events where we invite artists, we make sure they get paid. That's, yeah, for sure.
So I would say that we are basically running out of time. I would just leave perhaps the last word to Cassie, since she was also the last one speaking in the round. Do you want to add something about this question related to the vulnerability of the digital? In a sense, you are really working on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or people can experience through your artwork with you.
Yeah, yes. I mean, that would be the best. But I think I think that maybe what I've learned and what I would share is just that if you are competent at being an organizer, facilitator in real life, like you can really learn how to do that on digital spaces. But I think the important thing to remember is that we're working with real people and working through a crisis, but those people will still exist after the crisis. And if we can build things now that exist using tech in the best ways possible, the hope is actually to create relationships that will then extend off of the internet as well. And so I think that just, exercising a lot of kind of creativity and care in online spaces, it's like such an interesting thing to experiment with. And I'm so curious and excited to see how it develops in these next couple of weeks or months or however long this is going to take.
So thank you. I really want to thank all of you, because I think it was such a great sharing, and I will keep reflecting also about the discussion with Ed, and we will try to collect the comments of the audience from our chat that we had online. But also to inform you a bit about what is going on at the Disruption Network Club. We will also keep doing our program, both the community program and the conference program. So we are planning further community activity as online workshop. One is the 22nd of April and one is the 6th of May. And we will have our conference Evicted by Greed about global finance, housing and resistance, the 29th and 30th of May. At the same time, now we will experiment every Friday with our Disruptive Fridays. For sure, in the next, if we will start being independent with our platform, you will experience a lot of glitches, so the people will be happy. You will see the vulnerability of the digital in that occasion. And I would like now to call inside our chat Ela Kagel, that is directing the Disruption Network Club with me. And she will be the one hosting the next Disruptive Friday, next Friday. So, Ela, do you want to tell us something?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I was also really excited to see this first Disruptive Friday. I think it was so great to hear from all of you. And then, I can briefly say what we are thinking of for next week. So we've invited Michael Eng, who's an artist and engineer, also based in Berlin, and Andreas Kopp, who's a creative technologist, maker, also artist and teacher. And I will be moderating next week's session. And we're going to speak about critical making in times of Corona, and also about how we can use digital fabrication techniques such as 3D printing and laser cutting in the fight against this pandemic. Because Michael and Andreas, they participated recently in the hackathon organized by the German government called Wir versus Virus. And this was organized to find digital community actions against the coronavirus and its effects. And they developed, together with Nicolas de Koster, a design for an open source protective face shield. And this is currently being printed and also distributed to medical professionals to help them stay safe from infection. So it's a really interesting project that can also be used by others. And we will talk also more about how the maker movement and also working with open source technologies are especially important in these times of crisis. So we start again next week at 5 and 5 o'clock Berlin time, because I saw some people in the chat joined us an hour later, but we will still upload the video, so you'll be able to check it also later on. And yeah, we hope to see you there again, of course. Many thanks to everyone also for joining today.
Yeah, thank you, Lieke. I also wanted to say that if people want to follow our appointments, we have our newsletter as well. So you can just go online on the section follow and put your contacts there. So we are at the end of the first Disruptive Friday. I really want to thank everybody. Thank Ela, Marc, and Cassie for being with us. And thank to all the Disruption Network Club for this adventure, and to our audience. And see you next Friday, and enjoy this Friday evening going out to take a takeaway pizza. And so see you soon on the Weirder World, and have fun. Bye.
Bye.